Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 74. So this week I'm going to be talking about a few things that are going on and just giving you an update on what's happening with me. So first off, huge thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my new podcast, Writing Tip of the Day. It is now live on Alexa devices all over the world, as well as podcast networks. So Apple, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, all those places. It took a while since I announced it last week for it to appear everywhere. So I think it took about a week for it to go live on Apple, and then I think Stitcher and Overcast and Downcast, they all read Apple's network, and so it was taking a while for that to appear on those networks. So for those of you listening to Overcast or Pocket Cast or any of those popular podcast apps, you will be able to find it now. It's got 3 reviews right now, which is great. Certainly appreciate that. And I've had some people comment on it and say that it's a really interesting use of the smart speaker technology. So huge thank you to those of you who are following along. And I'm really shocked at how many people are listening to it, to be quite frank with you. And also, I also wanted to let you guys know that I'm recording this episode now. So if you hear some background noise or something like that, it's my family upstairs. I'm recording in a off cycle time. So my daughter just had her tonsils out and she's at home recovering. She's got a lot of energy right now. And so she is running around upstairs. So you may hear her or footsteps or things like that. So I apologize in advance for the audio, but you guys know that consistency is really important to me. So I didn't want to miss a week of this show. So this goes to show you, we all have things that take us away from our writing for a time, and we've got to step away and handle what we need to handle. And if we can get something done, then that's cool. But if not, it's not the end of the world, right? So I've had some thoughts over the past week, maybe 2 weeks or so, that I haven't really been able to articulate. And while I was in the waiting room and had a lot of downtime and things like that for my daughter's procedure, I was reading a lot of books. And in those books, because I didn't really want to work on any writing projects because I didn't want to capitalize too much of my brain. So I was reading a lot of books and I was watching a lot of YouTube videos and just kind of absorbing information that might be helpful to me when I sit down and write my next book, right? And I've been thinking a lot lately about burnout, and I think I talked about that in a few episodes past about how burnout is a really important problem in our community and how maybe we need to start thinking about some different ways to raise awareness to it and different ways to talk about it so that fewer people succumb to it. And I don't remember how I came across it, but I came across some articles on social media and how former Facebook execs and Twitter execs and people who have worked in the social media industry talking about how these platforms are in many ways driving depression and anxiety and sadness in our community. And at first I was like, okay, these are just Luddites, but as I started doing more research, it's like, okay, wait a second. These are actually social media execs. Like if anybody knows, it would be them, right? And so I started thinking that's really interesting because I think a lot of the things that I've been feeling lately have been many of those same things, not like depression or anything like that, but just this general anxiety about what's going to happen in the world. And I think regardless of what your politics are, I think you can relate to that, right? And so I did a little bit of research, read some articles, and it turns out that there's a lot of scientific evidence to show that social media is very much like an addiction. And if you think about an addiction like to drugs or to alcohol, there's a feedback loop, right? And that loop is a circle. And you get your first hit, and then you realize how amazing it is, and then you seek more and more of it. And the hits only come in small doses, and you don't know when they're going to come. But you're in this circle, in this feedback loop. And for most of that feedback loop, you feel like crap. But you buy into it and you participate in that feedback loop because you want that high, right? And you think that when you get that next high, you'll be happy forever, right? Or when you're feeling sad, you eat a large meal thinking that it will eliminate all your problems, and then it doesn't, and then you crash even lower. I wonder if our society is in a feedback loop of addiction to social media, and primarily social media like Facebook and Instagram, because I think they're the worst offenders of it, right? I mean, when they started, it was more status envy, right? It was more, oh yeah, we're creating these superficial connections with people and so on and so forth. And it was kind of cute, right? And people say, oh, you're just status envy. It's just comparisonitis. Don't do it. Don't talk about it. But now I feel like it's evolved into something a lot deeper and something more serious, and I was thinking about that, and then thinking about how that's no different than what the writing community is going through right now, right? So if it's true for our society as a whole, then I think it's also true for our society as an author community, that we are overly dependent on social media and external validation. And in some ways, I think it's always been that way. I think that even in the days of traditional publishing, I think it would be safe to say that writers sought validation from gatekeepers. But this feels a little different, right? Because, when did it become okay to post something on social media and expect to get bullied or expect negative feedback? Because that's precisely what happens. When you post something on social media, whether it be an opinion or whether it be something good, inevitably, if it's a post that rises and gets surfaced to other people, statistically, a certain percentage of the population is going to poo-poo whatever you put out, right? I think that is just I'm making a bold statement there. And I think we can all say with certainty that the negative things tend to get amplified more than the positive things. If that weren't true, then I don't think you could say about all these different blog posts out there or different social media posts that go on Facebook of someone doing something amazing, and then you'll have somebody that comments on the person's appearance, and then it just evolves into this Neanderthal fight, right? And let me give you a perfect example of this. So I was reading this book by a guy named Jaron Lanier. And he is the father of virtual reality, and he was talking a lot about this social media stuff. And he's a pioneer. I mean, the guy's just a visionary. I mean, you read his books, and he what I think a lot of people around the world are feeling. But he's well known, but I don't think he's as well known as he should be. And to be fair, when you first see him for the first time, I mean, he's an interesting dude, right? I mean, he's got dreads, and he's just got his own thing going on. And when you first see him, it's like, oh, okay, this guy's different than your normal TED Talk, right? But if you listen to what he has to say, it's profoundly amazing, right? And if you look at the comments, you'll see in any of his videos, one or two people that comment on his appearance and how overweight he is, or what his dreadlocks look like, or they say all these horrible things about him, and they completely miss his message. And then the comments just devolve. It's really terrible, but it's funny because that kind of proves his point of what he's talking about. But I've never seen anybody say that on the comments. But it's this really feeling of anxiety that I think people are having. And he talks about this in his book, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Now. So you can check that out. You can read a lot of his other books. But where I was going with this is, as a community, we are so dependent on validation from others. And when we don't get that validation, when we announce a book on Instagram, or we announce a book on Twitter, and it goes nowhere, or like 5 people like it, then we think, oh crap, this sucks. But then 2 weeks later, we'll have another post, or we'll upload a video or something, and you'll get 10 likes, and you'll be like, oh wow, okay, I need to do more of this. And then you do more of that, and then nothing happens, right? It's just this odd feedback loop that we have. And I think that we as a community have to recognize that. But here's the problem. Lanier makes as his core argument that social media companies have a responsibility to recognize the damage that they're doing in the world, because they didn't set out to do that, right? Google and Facebook, they didn't set out, evil masterminds to conquer the world and, sow discord and misinformation and negative people and all. They didn't set out to do that, right? But now, because these things are happening, they have a responsibility to address it. And if they don't, then the best way to address it is to delete your account until they fix it. And it's not to delete your account because you're a Luddite or because you don't believe in social media. It's to delete the account to start having a conversation. So someone asked him this and they said, well, if we all delete our social media accounts and it's like 10 people or 10% of the population or whatever, 90% of the population is still addicted. So what's the point? And I thought his answer was brilliant. And he said, if everyone in the room was addicted to alcohol, we could not have a meaningful conversation about addiction to alcohol if everyone was addicted, right? But if 10 people are not addicted, then they can start having that conversation and they can be the ones to continuously bring it up so that it becomes more aware generally in our society, right? And so I thought that was an interesting argument. But again, I found myself at a weird crossroads because it's like, okay, I get it. I would love to delete my Facebook account but there's a problem. And that problem is I'm an author, and in many respects, I depend on those platforms for my income. So here I am in the middle, knowing that these platforms certainly create feelings of anxiety and negativity within myself, knowing that they probably create that within my readers, and knowing that advertising on these platforms is how I make my money. What is someone like me to do, right? And I don't know that I have a good answer for that. But the next thing that it got me thinking about was, might this be a cause of why people are burning out, right? You read these stories all the time about how someone will release a book in some genre and readers don't like them. And so then, cancel culture comes along and you get all these trolls that come and they start manipulating the system and they make that person feel so bad. And in some cases, some people commit suicide because of it. You think about that, and then you think about releasing a book into the market that doesn't sell, and then releasing another book into the market that doesn't sell, and doing this again and again and again. And then imagine with me for a moment doing that and then seeing some success, only to see people poo-poo all over that success, right? I can understand why people get burned out, right? I look at a lot of visionaries and a lot of people that were very popular in the self-publishing movement, and I won't name any names. I think it's fair you'll know who I'm talking about if you've been around as long as I have. Authors that were cheerleaders for self-publishing and were giving advice after they become successful about the things that they did in order to become successful so that other people could do the same thing, right? Very best-selling author, had one of his books made into a movie. You well know who I'm talking about, right? And so, a lot of people ripped on them for their success, and I wonder if they just got tired of it. If they just got tired of the negativity, because the algorithms of all these social networks just seem to amplify that. And very rarely, very seldomly do the positive things get through enough to change how people are feeling, right? And I wonder if people just got tired of it. And they just said, you know what? I'm tired of trying to put myself out there in the community and try to help people, and then getting DMs and private messages from people who are just saying that I'm a fraud or I'm a charlatan, when all I was trying to do was help people, right? And I use successful writers as an example there. But if you just think about your regular writer, I can understand how somebody would get tired of that. They would get tired of putting a book out into the market and then having to deal with this bullshit. Pardon my French, but it sucks. and the worst part is I don't know that there's a really good answer for it. I mean, you can delete your social media account, but that's not going to stop what other people around you are doing, right? And so social media was not on my radar for this burnout stuff, but I think it is going to be now, because I think that there's something there, and I think that there's something that we could start talking about in our community, that the fact that we're addicted to social media, for better or worse, and we depend on it in many respects for our income, and we're kind of between a rock and a hard place, and I don't know what the impetus is going to be to change it. Now, here's the thing: I'm not overly pessimistic about this. I do think that we as a community will get better, but I don't see a way out of this right now. So yeah, so just something I've been thinking about over the last few days, because I have not been able to get any words in. But I've been doing a lot of reading because I believe very much in Dean Wesley Smith's idea of the time of great forgetting. It's the time over the summer when it's really nice outside and people are doing really good things like vacations and so on and so forth, and people forget about writing, right? And so I did not want to forget about that because this next week or so is going to be a little challenging. I'm running on a lack of sleep, if you can't tell, because I'm a little rambly today. But this stuff that I've been reading and looking at and hearing people talk really impacted me because, again, it's something that I haven't been able to articulate over the last few weeks. But I think I've made a conscious decision that from today moving forward, I'm going to be cutting a number of things out of my life, right? And one of those things is going to be the news. Now, I'm still going to look at the news and so on and so forth, but and this is not a political statement, so please don't take it this way, but I'm just tired of the media and the negativity that they promote. I'm tired of opening up my phone in the mornings and seeing the headlines and just seeing negativity. I think media has they have a better calling than that. And I think that they could do a better job of it. And I think that that's fueling a lot of the anxiety that I personally have about how things are going on in the world. Now, I'll still look at some of the news occasionally, but it's going to be something that I really cut out. And I'm really only going to look at news sources that are responsible about this sort of thing, right? And regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, there are not very many that are responsible. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to limit my social media. I don't know how I'm going to do it, though, because one of the really good things that I'm doing is daily videos on social media, and that seems to be impacting a lot of people. But so I'm not going to stop that, but I'm going to figure out some ways for me to discontinue some of the maybe bad habits that I have around social media. And then another thing I'm just going to try to do is try to incorporate this into the burnout conversation, because I really do think that there's something there. So with that, I'm going to cut it short this week. I hope that everyone is having a phenomenal week. I'm really tired, so I think I am going to go to bed. So I hope you'll forgive me for rambling this week, but hope you're having a phenomenal week. I will talk to you next week, and don't forget to listen to Writing Tip of the Day at authorlevelup.com/writing tip of the day. Talk to you next week. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.